Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 14 years of profiling IT mission programs in the federal government. This is our 7th annual Profiles and Excellence program, and we are coming to you from the studios of WTOP and the Federal News Network. I'm Luke McCormack, and during today's show we will discuss IT program success stories at numerous government agencies and hear from the key leaders and industry partners that are making them happen. With me on today's show are Greg Garcia, who is the Deputy CIO and Chief Data Officer with the U.S. Army, Joe Klimovich, Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer of the Department of Justice, Gary Washington, Chief Information Officer with USDA, Maria Rote, Chief Information Officer, SBA, Jose Areta, Chief Information Officer for HHS, Jonathan Album, Principal Digital Strategist with ServiceNow, Dennis McGlynn, Federal Civilian Manager at New Relic, and O'Neill Cross, Principal with Deloitte. Well, we've got a tremendous lineup here, and we've had a tremendous year. We're going to get right into it. Greg, I'm going to start with you at the U.S. Army. Can you give us a highlight of a major program that the U.S. Army has implemented in this fabulous year of 2019 as we're rolling out the modernization strategy across the federal government?
Yeah, good afternoon, Luke. It's great to be here and representing the Army.
Great to have you.
It's been really kind of an exciting time to be a CIO and a CDO, as we'll all talk about. For the Army, as you know, we're in a really, according to the National Defense Strategy, really in a global competition phase. And really part of that is helping mission decisions be of higher quality and of faster pace. And from the IT venue, what we've really tried to do is take advantage of the resiliency and availability of the cloud, and then having our data actually accessible, that is visible, accessible, and understandable, and trusted, and interoperable. Some big things we've done this last year is really learn from this journey. As you know, getting to the cloud is quite a, not only a technical task, but a cultural task, and getting that data to be accurate and curated is a big part of that. So we've actually this last year had our financial data for both our non-ERPs and ERPs into a data lake. We've actually got personnel data now in a big data enterprise where we're doing deep learning and data analysis against cohorts over years and years. We've actually now have a platform this year that is in the cyber arena where we feed all our network data and defensive cyber information to give us a holistic view of what we're doing. We now have our intelligence data in a cloud that we work with the greater community in DoD, and our global force management information system in a new platform that allows us to see ourselves better. So as you can see, we've started the journey into the cloud, really kind of cloud-enabled, data-driven is our strategy. And we're going to do that smartly as we go through the next several years.
Yeah, it just seems like all the agencies, and I'm sure we'll hear more, everyone is sort of moved out of the pliers and wires sort of mode. They're into the cloud, above the line, taking advantage of the elasticity and all these other things that the cloud has to offer, and really giving that capability to the warfighter, right? I mean, that's what it's all about.
Super important for the Army, right? From the very tactical edge, disconnected, to the tactical, all the way back to the enterprise, and getting that data to go both ways.
Right, and being connected, disconnected, big deal in the U.S. Army,
yes,
right?
Sir.
I'm sure it is across the globe. Joe, how about at Justice? I know you all have been just on an absolute march for modernizing your entire community there. You want to give us some highlights as to what did 2019 look like?
Thanks, Luke. Very glad to be here, and thanks for having me. I'd like to talk about how we're pursuing shared services at the Department of Justice. You look at the President's management agenda, it sets a long-term vision for modernizing IT systems across the federal government. And one of the primary ways that it does this, it sets out a sharing of quality services, cross-agency priority goal. And I believe that shared services is the right way to do business within the government, and you can really leverage the scaling and the successful services, streamlining operations, eliminating unnecessary duplication, and minimizing the cost, modernizing the technology, improving security along the way. And so in alignment with this goal, The Department of Justice was selected this year to provide security operations services as a shared services for government customers. And our SOC, our Security Operations Center, we're very proud of that operation. We've added a lot of additional capabilities over the year, and network monitoring, incident response, cyber threat hunting, cross-agency threat information sharing. And it can be challenging for smaller agencies to deliver this kind of functionality, and it's very expensive. So we've been extending our SOC capabilities to other customers across the government. We have a broad range of customers today, and we're continuing to look at expanding our customers in this area. And the other area on shared services is our criminal information services. We provide access to national crime information databases to 325 agencies, federal, tribal, and others. So you think about it, we have all this database, all these databases with crime information, and it has to be shared out with other agencies. And we've just 2 weeks ago we awarded a new contract to modernize our access to NCIC, which is a large FBI database containing crime information. What we're trying to do here, Luke, is to make sure that no software is needed to be installed locally, no local installations. We take care of all the maintenance. All we're doing is providing access, very secure access where identity is very important. We think that this is a great way to provide these services to other federal agencies. And part of this is making sure that we're making this information available securely in a very deliberate manner. And if anybody wants to learn more about our shared services on justice.gov, we've got a link, and anybody can ask for more information. So,
the JSOC has been a legacy in this community for several years, and it's just a powerhouse of capability. It's great to see that they're taking all that industrial strength, porting it out to a small agency that may not have the wherewithal to be able to do that, and certainly do it quickly, and just port it right in there, and all of a sudden now they have this fantastic capability that you all have been developing over years, right? I think it's awesome. Gary, how about at USDA? I know you all have, once again, another big cabinet level agency that has just been doing incredible things, and what I love, every speech you give, you always talk about the farmers, you talk about that community out there, you talk about that citizen experience, right? I think it's awesome. Tell us what did 2019 look like for USDA?
Well, thank you, Luke. Thank you for having me on the show. As you know, USDA was one of the leaders of the CAP goal for IT modernization in the President's management agenda. So we've entered into a partnership with the Centers of Excellence, GSA, and we've been modernizing in several different areas: cloud computing, data center consolidations, improving the customer experience, data analytics, and improving our contact centers. So we've got down from 39 enterprise data centers to 4 with the goal of getting to 2 in 2020, which is significantly reduced our total cost of ownership across USDA. We've migrated 81% of our applications to a cloud environment. I think what we're most proud of is how we're digitizing our access, digitizing the access that farmers have to us by modernizing our WIP program, market facilitation program. Farmers for the first time can view their loans online, and we're continuing to improve how we provide services to not just the farmers, but ranchers, foresters, and our scientists. In our data analytics, we have dashboards that we use across the department for our administrative programs, as well as our other programs that we provide services to folks. But it's not just about the dashboards. We actually use those to make informed decisions and do analytics on the data that we have. And what that is forcing people to do is improve the quality of their data, and they know that we're going to use that in terms of how we make our management decisions and everything. We're continuing to modernize our contact centers, how we engage our public, how they get access from us by using artificial intelligence tools, machine learning, robotic process automation as well. And OCIO have partnered with our CFO colleagues and HR in terms of using robotic process automation to we have to fill vacancy slots, but to provide provide high value work for our employees and automate some of the manual processes that we have across USDA.
What gets measured gets done, right?
Yes.
And it's great to see that you're using some of those higher order analytics to be able to really zero in on some of these trouble areas, and that you're changing that sort of UX, UI experience, and I'm sure multi-mode capability for that vast community you have out there across the country. Maria, it has been a banner year for SBA. I would say that I can't imagine that 2019 has not been the most significant year for SBA as far as IT modernization and for the entire community, right? I mean, you've been experimenting, developing, iterating a lot of these capabilities for the rest of the interagency to use. Tell us about 2019.
Thank you, Luke. The SBA, serving those more than 40 million small businesses across the United States. We've got a $200 billion loan portfolio, $30 billion in private equity funds. And as we provide services, counseling, loans, certifications to small businesses, I realized early on when I got to SBA 3 years ago that we really didn't have a good view of our customer. And over this last year, we've made some significant strides to get to that 360 view of our customer. Who is that customer? Who is that small business? And what is their journey and their interaction with the Small Business Administration? And what we've done is we've built out the platform for that to bring together a lot of the stovepipes across the agency. It was pretty clear early on that we had, counseling programs and training programs and, programs for veterans and programs for women, and they weren't connected. And being able to bring that together, to be able to see what that view is of the customer so that when they get a loan, it was a result of counseling that they had maybe 6 months ago, or a veteran that gets, through their TAP classes, everyone gets some training on starting a business as they're exiting the military service. Well, what's that connection between someone leaving the Army, right, Greg? Somebody leaves the Army, and then somewhere down the road, whether it's 6 months, a year, 18 months, they move somewhere in the middle of the country and then they start a business. How do I know what that connection is going through? And we've been laying the foundation for that over the last year. It's actually been more than that, but bringing that together has been a really big lift. And we're now starting to make those connections and bring those programs onto a common platform with the big vision of seeing that 360 view of the customer. It's interesting because, from a CIO vantage point, for, certainly the CIOs here, being able to see across the organization where not every office sees what the other office is doing, and finding out that this person over here talks to that person over here, I need that piece of data and that piece of information. The CIO, I think, sometimes has that vantage point that sometimes isn't seen elsewhere in the organization, that can see across the mission space and really understand how the connections are being made. But taking that data and then we've put analytics tools in the hands of the users. We've got a data community of practice that's 2 years old now, and giving the tools to them and seeing what they're doing and taking that data and accessing the data and making decisions from that, understanding different parts of the country, where loans are being made, for instance, what demographics we're hitting or we're not hitting, and being able to use that. So building that 360 view of the customer, we're still early in on it, but we've laid the foundation for that, and now we're bringing our program offices onto the platform little by little to be able to get to that 360 view. That's been a big lift, and I just recently brought in on board a CX person. She's phenomenal, and she's focused in on that customer journey. How does that customer interact with the Small Business Administration? How do they interact? Do they email? Do they call? Do they use the website? What is that? And really honing in on that as we're rolling out the platform.
Right.
So it's been a big lift.
Yeah, it's been a huge lift, and it's interesting you point out about how the CIO really has a dimension there of every different business line within a community, right? They see it from a perspective that not many of the the folks in an agency see it, right? So you have that opportunity to really pull it together as you're building these common platforms and, you know, laying down some of these modernized capabilities to enable the small business owners, right? Mm. Jose, you've been over at the HHS as the CIO now for a few months, but you've been at HHS for quite some time prior to that. 2019 certainly been a big year for the HHS. Give us the highlights.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to take your question in a little different direction,
sure.
And I think it's really important.
Expect no less of that.
I figured you'd say that. I want to focus on our mission space and the people that we're impacting, because I think that's extremely important, and you've heard that with everybody. I want you to imagine for a second that you're a single mom in a rural part of the United States, recently divorced. Both your kids went to college, and they didn't come back. They went to a city for a job. And you drive 40 minutes to work every day, right? I'm talking about social determinants of health, specific data things that are important to health. You drive 40 minutes to be an RN every single day for work, and you hurt your back at work, and you're prescribed opioids. And you start to take them for the pain, but you're lonely. There's no sense of community. You live in a really rural part of the United States, and you become addicted. And your neighbor comes by to visit one day, and you say you're not feeling well, so you're going to sit on the couch for a few days. Neighbor comes by to check on you 2 days later, and you haven't moved. You're abusing your opioids. You're taking 20 to 25 Vicodin a day. Now, your neighbor scoops you up and takes you to the hospital in a rural part of the United States where they don't have access to data. And when they take you to the hospital, the doctor there says, "We think you have pneumonia. We're going to put you on an IV drip, and in 12 hours, we think you'll be better." But in 12 hours, guess what? 90% of your major organs are starting to fail, your lungs collapsed, you're fully intubated, and you're life flighted to New York City. And the second you get to New York City, the doctor realizes you have something called sepsis. Now, there's only 7 or 8 strands of sepsis, okay? And they're all treatable. You could treat it at the moment of cough if you have data and you have insight to that. So the doctor puts you on an IV intravenous drug, 7 or 8 of them, which treats every form of sepsis. Now, 7 of those drugs are killing you. One's killing the sepsis that you have, and you have 2 days for a data exchange of a blood specimen to determine what type of sepsis you have. Now, I've actually personally experienced this, and the person survived, but after finding out what type of sepsis she had, she was given a drug and then given 4 other drugs to recover from the 7 drugs that were killing her.
Right, we've all
Now,
heard that story. Yeah.
Now, imagine if you had insights into de-identified claims data related to prescription drug use. Imagine if you had the ability to tap into a social determinants of health data platform, which is the basic data any marketer uses to actually sell you a cup of coffee or tell you where you can get cheap gas. Imagine how that could impact that individual's life. And Maria talked a ton about a foundation. The foundation that we've built in the back office so that we can peer into cloud tenants across the department, the multiple recurrent neural networks that we've built, so we can actually use a long short-term memory recurrent neural network to analyze different data sets will actually give us the ability not only to drive policy to help that individual, but to drive a return on investment as it relates to de-identified prescription drugs and the way they're being prescribed to individual users. And I think it's extremely important that we never lose sight of the person and the individual that we're trying to serve. So at HHS, we're piloting behavioral-based identity at the edge of the network. We've done 3 recurrent neural networks right now, one of which you haven't heard about, but it's in the cyberspace. And we've built the ability to peer into multiple cloud tenants and actually start to share data across multiple cloud tenants, all in the back office, but we're doing them to serve that woman that is in rural upstate New York and has that addiction.
What a powerful story, and I'll tell you, it goes to show how important, having that data to the right individual at the right time is really important to enable any of these missions. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. With me on today's show are Greg Garcia with the U.S. Army, Joe Klimovich, Department of Justice, Gary Washington with USDA, Maria Rote with the SBA, Jose Arita with HHS, Jonathan Album with ServiceNow, O'Neill Cross with Deloitte, and Dennis McGlynn with New Relic. We are talking about 2019 in this special edition of the Federal Executive Forum. I'm going to throw it over to you, Jonathan. And tell us about what 2019 looked like for you all and ServiceNow. You have a wide swath across the entire community. We just heard a very powerful story about enabling a mission, enabling an individual, enabling a family. Tell us about 2019 and ServiceNow.
Sure. Well, thanks, Luke. It's great to be here. As you mentioned, ServiceNow is working all across the federal government, doing things that are very similar to what we heard from the other panelists around data, around creating visibility into data and helping good decisions be made. So one of the stories that comes to mind that I really I like to talk about is what we've been doing at the Air Force. We heard about the National Defense Strategy already, and having good business operations that make the National Defense Strategy actions successful was really a hard challenge that we worked on with the Air Force. Prior to working together, the key data that would drive business decisions would be in spreadsheets and emails, phone calls. It would be locked away in people's minds, and there wasn't a central repository to manage this information. And without that, it could be very difficult to know that you're making the right decision. So we worked together over the past year plus to establish a comprehensive dashboard capability that brings together information about different initiatives, projects, the milestones, key objectives, risks, issues, and puts it all in one place under one pane of glass, so to speak. So anyone who's participating at the an executive level, a senior level in the Air Force, has one place to go to find out the status of the most important work. Again, before, all this information would be brought together to these same leaders, but it would be coalesced from all these disparate data sources. And by the time those PowerPoint presentations made it to somebody, they might be outdated. And that was a lot of work to create those PowerPoint presentations. So we helped the Air Force eliminate all of those manual tasks. We've made it really clear now when there is an issue, where to go. The dashboard makes it very visible. As we said, what gets measured gets managed, right? So they have the same ability to dive into a particular topic or an area of a project because they're using ServiceNow to bring that information together in one place. So the people's time is very valuable and it's always limited. So if I have to search through a lot of different sources of data to find out how something's going, one, I might miss something, but two, it takes a lot of time. And the things that we're really proud about in this engagement are getting people focused on the right work and taking the busy work, the low value tasks, and doing our best to automate them and make it simpler to dive right in when something is requires attention. And it makes a real difference when you know that I'm looking at current data and I'm looking at areas that need my attention and focus. I can be very effective, and that's a really important story for us. We've now taken our government community cloud and we've migrated it into a FedRAMP High environment, and it's just received an Impact Level 4 certification. So all of this data is operating in one of the highest unclassified environments that the Air Force has. And then we're looking at moving it into the SIPRNet over the course of the next year. So good work. We're very excited by it. Again, very much in alignment with, I think, what we're talking about here, data and visibility, making work simple in support of the National Defense Strategy. So it's a good story for us.
And a very modern cloud-enabled environment that's super secure, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And also, I'm sure mobile-enabled, right? People know that it's got real-time data, it's accurate data, it's secure data. I feel enabled, right, when I'm in that kind of a situation.
Right.
That's great. O'Neill, how about at Deloitte? Once again, you're a global entity. You've got all kinds of activities going on across the globe, both in the private sector and the public sector. Give us an example, sort of highlight what 2019 looked like for this federal sector, and maybe you can point out a specific program for us.
Thanks, Luke, and thanks for having me. And at Deloitte, one of the things that we have spent this year is growing our cloud practice and helping our clients think about cloud in a different way. How do we enable the mission? So we've spent this year focusing on how do we help them along that journey, because oftentimes we look at cloud as just cloud, but we want to shift the paradigm to how you enable the mission. And I'll give an example of one of our government public sector clients that we have. Over the years, they've tried to get to the journey around cloud. And what we're able to do is bring our cloud capabilities, such as Ada Data Suite that we've brought in to help you understand your workload, right? And help you bring that sense of, okay, where do I start? What are the applications that I need to bring to the cloud? What do I need to refactor? What do I need to re-engineer, right? Because those things are important because you need to tie it back to that mission. And we're able to help that client do that. And what was important for us is help them understand the workload. For example, they thought they had 15 applications. When we ran our added data tool, we realized they had over 100 applications, right? So how do you go through that process systematically to be able to identify what are those mission-capable systems that you want to help the client with? So those are the things that we're focusing on. And the other piece is also focus on the people. So as we look to cloud, what are the skill sets that we need to ensure that we're operating in the cloud? So we're helping our client within our government public sector to do that. And also the knowledge base, how do we transfer that knowledge? So when we are gone, when Deloitte is not there, how do we make sure that the agencies are enabling and ensure that they could use cloud to drive their mission? So those are some of the things that we're focused on, is growing our cloud capabilities.
And I think, having the lessons learned from across the globe, right? Again, in the private sector engagements, public sector engagements, sort of bringing that to bear in an engagement in an agency is super powerful, right? This is a tectonic shift, this technology, and what this technology can do. But there's also a big cultural shift, right? Yep. Skill sets, et cetera, to the IT employee, et cetera, is contractual dynamics, right? I'm buying by the drink now. That's a whole different dynamic. So a lot of moving parts when you look to modernize using this type of technology. So I want to thank you for that. Well, how about at New Relic? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what is going on at New Relic, and particularly around when I look at a capability like New Relic, Dennis, I think about, in order to enable these capabilities, you have to have good instrumentation to be able to meter what you're doing. These environments are super complex these days, right? Hybrid cloud, et cetera. You've got to know where the bottlenecks are, where the flow is. Tell us about New Relic. What is New Relic? And then where is New Relic? And tell us about what you've done in 2019 for this community.
Sure, thanks, Luke. And you mentioned earlier about what gets measured gets done. Well, when you think in terms of digital transformation, and you think in terms of that being running your business on software, you look at New Relic, and New Relic is a cloud-based instrumentation platform for your software and your back-end software cloud infrastructure. So if you look at New Relic, we're working with 17,000 customers worldwide, half of the Fortune 100, many of the federal agencies that are going through this digital transformation process. We're helping them with citizen experience, modernization projects, cloud migration, and mobile. And today I'd like to just feature a story about one of our clients. It's a client that goes back a few years. It's CMS and it's healthcare.gov. Most of you are familiar with the story.
I don't think there's a person in here.
Yeah. So I'll be brief. The site crashed in 2 hours. Only 6 people were signed up for insurance after the first day. One of the key systems, the login system, kept failing. There were a lot of different agencies involved, a lot of different vendors and contractors, and as you can imagine, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So CMS brought in a group of experts. Today we might refer to them as U.S. Digital Services and 18F. And the first thing they did was bring in New Relic to instrument the application. Within hours, they had code level visibility, root cause analysis, and when the team saw the data, they all bought in. We all know the end of the story. They were able to resolve the issues and relaunch successfully. Today, CMS uses New Relic for multiple programs. CMS today supports over 50 million citizens with their public-facing applications. One of the takeaways from this was that they experienced a improvement in mean time to repair by 75%. They doubled their number of websites the programs that they were supporting and active users, but only increased their staff by 25%. They moved from quarterly releases to an agile 2-week release cycle. They improved their development time by 80%. And a lot of the folks that were involved in that project, the SIs, the systems integrators, the folks at USDS and 18F continue to use New Relic for projects they're working on today.
You know, and that was early on in the entire federal government's modernization journey. And, you know, we all know that if you're going to modernize, you have to modernize in a very modern way and use, current contemporary tools and techniques. And it's, you know, instrumentation is a big part of this, right? You have to be able to measure these activities so you know where your attention needs to be focused.
Exactly.
Greg, we're going to circle back to you, and let's spin it around and talk about some of the benefits to the agency as a result of these initiatives. You know, if I'm a warfighter out there, you know, and I'm a soldier and I'm doing my thing, and I've got all this capability, clouds and data lakes, et cetera, what does that mean to me? You know, what does that mean to me as far as enabling me to fight the bad guy?
It really boils down to mission success, right? You know, we've talked briefly about the National Defense Strategy, but we're really at a very concerning friction point here, a pivotal point here about how we prepare for the future, and that's really a whole of a nation activity. And for the Army's role in the multi-domain operations, all-domain operations, it's really information is the new strategic asset for joint interoperability with our partners and allies, and concerted direct operations that provide national security to the government. So, just, you know, what we talked about is you can't defend what you don't know. So understanding what data, what operations, what processes are used, and monitoring that with seasoned information. You know, one of the things we did this last year is the Army Leadership Dashboard. We put 135 data sets that have never been together before to actually expose, make new relationships, and inform decision making for the Army seniors down all the way to the local battalion that has to worry about readiness. Readiness and across training, across equipment, across individual capabilities at the individual level, the unit level, and above the corps level. That's all based upon information that you can see and assess to make those decisions about investments and resources. So for the Army, you know, we've been at a very significant increase in tactical readiness over 2019. Have BC, our battle combat teams, at the highest readiness they've been in years, focusing that information to make real-time decision making, and turning that focus to strategic readiness in addition to tactical readiness.
You know, and when you modernize these environments, all of a sudden you can put all these databases in there in quick order and make that available, so that you can have that experience as you're describing. That's fantastic. Joe, how about at Justice? You and I were just at an FBI conference where there was a whole bunch of state and locals there, right? And talking about data sharing, et cetera. What does that look like to the state and local when you connect all those things together? What does it mean to them? What's the experience that they get? And perhaps maybe you can talk about experience to a small agency on that other subject you had about your JSTOC and sort of piping that capability in there. What does that mean to a small agency? Two different questions there, but you know, it's all about the experience.
Yeah, it's all about sharing, whether you're sharing services or sharing data.
Good point.
You know, there's 91 small federal agencies out there that I think in a lot of cases don't have the resources that, say, the Army might have, or large departments. So if they can leverage existing services and again, everybody wants high-quality services that reduce cost and make sure they're really secure. But that's what it really comes down to. And sharing data is just, it makes sense. But you've got to do it intelligently with the right controls. You know, security is something you can't compromise. And one of the things that we've found with sharing of data is it's the identity and authentication of who's on the other end, because you're typically, you can't see the person anymore. And it's like, and we share with the 18,000 state and local law enforcement organizations. There's 800,000 law enforcement officers in this country. There's of the 600 federally recognized tribes, 220 have their own law enforcement organizations, but even the civilian organizations on reservations can access our information for background checks on those that are regularly dealing and have interaction with children, for housing situations. So a lot of people access our information, and being able to positively know who you're sharing that information with, and do they have, even if you know who they are, do they have access, should they have access to the information? You've got to protect the information, but we've also got to share it.
Yeah, who is it, what is it, and delicate balance there, but super important. Gary, how about at USDA? If I'm a farmer out there in the middle of Nebraska, I'm trying to look at loan, crop information, whatever it is that USDA is providing, which is a plethora of capability. What does that experience look like? What does it feel like in 2019 versus 2018?
Well, as we've gone on this journey, we switched everything, and it's really about business value and improving the customer experience across USDA. And we've been listening to our customers and our stakeholders and the people that we serve, and they've always wanted to engage us in an automated fashion and have the opportunity or the option to go into a service center agency and speak to a USDA employee. So we're working very hard across many mission areas to provide that experience for them. We're starting to share data with other entities in order to make their experience more pleasurable and get them the information they need at their fingertips. Obviously, we have to do it in a secure fashion and keep other controls in mind. But it's really forcing us to have business conversations about how we deliver IT services, not just to our USDA employees, but to the farmers on the farm, and have conversations about things like precision ag, and how we serve rural communities. How do you get technology out there to somebody in an underserved area?
The farmers are the backbone of this country. USDA has how many employees?
100,000 employees.
100,000 employees. So that's a big community right there. That's your and then you've got, I'm sure, several 100,000 entities, whether they're farmers or suppliers or what have you, that you're providing citizen services to.
And
right?
I believe we're in 39 different countries as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That I don't think is something that a lot of people realize. So there you go. The foreign service officers, right?
Yeah,
These different
foreign ag, yes.
Yeah, foreign ag officers.
Foreign ag.
Okay, well, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. With me on today's show are Greg Garcia with the Army, Joe Klimovich, Department of Justice, Gary Washington, USDA, Maria Rote with the SBA, Jose Arita with HHS, Jonathan Album with ServiceNow, O'Neill Cross with Deloitte, and Dennis McGlynn with New Relic. We're talking about 2019 special edition of the Federal Executive Forum. We're going to throw it over to you, Maria, and we were just talking about what is the experience to the user, the citizen, the small business owner, right? As you modernize and roll out on this new platform, start stacking all this capability. What does that look like to a small business owner who's trying to get a loan, let's say, for example?
How about if we start with a single sign-on?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, we've got when you at SBA Thank you. We call it SBA Connect. Okay. So we have systems that are login that were built homegrown almost 20 years ago, and by the end of March, we're targeting getting rid of all those individual login and consolidating to SBA Connect to have a unified login for our customers. That's something that we've needed to do. Our legacy systems are just not working, and the benefit not only of modernizing legacy is getting to a single sign-in for our customers. We need to do that. So, having that front end, not only are we doing all the back end work, but getting to that single sign-on is probably, I think, part of a bigger deal for our customers. They don't have to keep up with all those passwords, and we've done a lot of testing, and we actually brought on one of our first applications on that about a month ago. So that's moving out, and we'll have that rolled out by the end of March. But for those customers, you know, that journey I mentioned earlier, that I brought somebody on board for that customer experience in that journey. Because SBA deals a lot in paper, we're moving to electronic, digital transformation, a lot of those elements, but really understanding that journey from the customer and how they interact with the Small Business Administration, how many times they have to upload the same document, you know, how many times do they have to do the same thing over and over again for different program offices, and really understanding that journey so that we can bring that together so that when you upload a document, you know, for pick a program, that same document applies regardless of the program and the application you're trying to do. So, you know, simplifying the user experience, lessening the amount of paperwork, turning things into digital, that's been just a huge part of our journey. And this is not something that takes 6 months. This is a 3-year journey. We've started that work this year. Even before that, a lot of the underlying work around data and bringing that together. But we've got another 18 to 24 months till we have that really unified experience. But we're starting small, a piece at a time. We've got the SBA Connect online for the single sign-on, incorporating that, and then slowly bringing on the different programs so we can get to that. We've got to get to that unified experience for those small businesses. And not only, and how do we better serve those small businesses? Because with the data on the back end that we have, not only understanding where we're providing loans and counseling, but being predictive that says if you've done X and Y, you're likely to do Z, and I can provide better services to you on that. So part of that experience is, you know, being smarter on the back end, understanding the data, but also simplifying the interaction with the Small Business Administration.
Better log on, secure, sounds ho-hum, but it's really important, right? Everyone needs that. But I love this predictive, you know, so you're not starting at zero when you do interact with SBA, and you can further along your interaction there as far as the experience and what you're after in regards to a small business owner. Jose, you gave us a very powerful story about you know, what this means to an individual. What does it mean to the agency? You know, as you all modernize and starting to use this capability, provide that level of care, that level of capability to an individual, what does that mean as far as the agency and what they're capable of doing at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the story that I told is where we're driving towards. But what we're doing is we're testing these technologies and back-end operations, and it's fundamentally changing the agency. And it's interesting, Luke, it creates a significant amount of tension within an agency when you execute in that way. So I just to give you an example, imagine as a program professional if you had the last 10 years of spend on ServiceNow for the entirety of the portfolio, and you used a machine learning capability to cluster it around terms and conditions and price points, so you had full visibility. You could drill down into the contract to actually look at the terms and conditions if you wanted it. How would that fundamentally change and empower that program official to do acquisition planning, to do market research? And it creates a significant amount of tension because it's a different way of doing business. It allows you to move much quicker. It allows you to interact with your contracting professional in a much different way. So we focus solely on human-centered design to actually build tools specifically focused on decreasing operational costs within the portfolio. And another thing that we're doing right now is if you take the total number of pages in the books in the Library of Congress and you times that by 2,000, that's the amount of data that hits our network every single day. Now, how does it change an incident response professional's job if you start to analyze that in real time with a machine learning capability and focus their energy and attention on, you know, the 100 or so incidents that are probably most pressing and important to them, right? So it fundamentally changes how they work. It fundamentally changes the financial model of how you're delivering services internally. Because remember, in my role, I'm the policy official for HHS, but I'm also a service provider to probably 13,000, 14,000 customers across the agency. And then it gives you the ability as the CIO to go to CMS, to go to ACL, to go to ROIG function and say, maybe we can partner and we can package these tools, this TensorFlow capability we built, and do predictive analytics on de-identified prescription drug data. And maybe pull in a social determinants of health data platform and start to look at that information in a different way so it can inform you when you go and set policy.
That volume of data you're talking about, you know, you hear that statement about, you know, a needle and a stack of needles. Boy, you're really talking about that in that kind of environment. That's just a whole different way of looking at that type of capability. Jonathan, over at ServiceNow, you gave us a great example of sort of, I'd say, digitizing, you know, sort of that daily experience, you know. Once an agency is in that kind of environment, right, and kind of realize that, you know, sort of, you know, what does that mean to an agency? What does that feel like to the individual, to the decision makers up and down the chain as far as, you know, just, you know, enablement of their operation?
So, you know, ServiceNow was built with a purpose. The purpose is to make the world of work better for people. What does that mean? It's when you have data all over the place, or you have services or processes that are disconnected, it's very hard to get your job done. One of the things that we focused on at the Air Force and, you know, really across government with all of our customers is taking out the work that is low value so people can be focused on the things that are mission, that are high value, that you can go out and you can serve the farmer, you can serve the woman in Jose's story, the warfighter has what they need. And we're all better able to do that when we're not thinking about how do I get an HR issue solved? How do I get my computer fixed? How do I navigate the complexity and the bureaucracy of an organization? So by simplifying those workflows and taking those digital workflows and connecting them in ways that add value to employees on a day-to-day basis, we all become better at doing our mission. And that's sort of the core value that we have as a company, and the story that is consistent through our engagements in government, and something I think that's a theme through all of the stories that we've heard today. When you can be focused on the mission and you can be able to show that the work we do in IT ties to a program outcome that's positive and the citizen has a loan, or a warfighter is better served, or someone gets better health care, you know, you can really feel good about the job that you're doing, and you can be confident that, you know, the work you do is added value to the people who really need government at a certain point in their lives. So, you know, it's very rewarding, I think.
Sure, and I mean, you're really talking about being able to have the individual sort of focus above the line, right? You know, I remember telling one of my product managers, you want to be a hero, you know, get time and attendance approval and travel approval on a mobile device, and people will love you forever, right? You know, I mean, it's just, why wouldn't they, right? Yeah, it's just simple things.
Does my computer work? Does my phone work? Do I have
can I log on securely, right? And then
single sign-on, a simple idea that's hard to do, but when implemented, you know, it makes everybody's life a little bit easier, and you can be focused on the really high-value critical work, which is core to the PMA, and this is what this administration is talking about.
100%. O'Neill, how about Deloitte? You know, you gave a very great example there of a whole transformation in regards to cloud enablement. You know, once an agency sort of in that environment, and as you were saying, sort of Deloitte has sort of transitioned out, the agency is fully enabled or becoming fully enabled. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What is the expectation? What's your goal? Maybe what you've done with other clients, where you want to get these agencies to?
I think one of the things at Deloitte, we want to get the agency and our government and public sector clients focus on the mission, and we talk about it. How do you enable mission, right? You know, one of the areas that I focus on within Deloitte is around cloud integration, which, you know, when you look at big programs, sometimes we're not very intentional about it. You know, I had one client that was up in Seattle, and one of our clients, 1,700 interfaces point to point, connected 90 applications. So if we talk about that 360 view, right, we have to figure out how to solve those issues. And at Deloitte, those are some of the focus areas that we're looking at, because, you know, as you transition to the cloud, you're going to see a lot of hybrid cloud. How you integrate your application on-prem and also your application in the cloud. So those are important shifts that we're seeing. And it's some of the things that we at Deloitte are focusing, because it helps the mission and it helps drive the outcome of some of the things that Jose talks about.
Right, you're going to have these hybrid cloud environments where these legacy installations, right, with the Smart Cloud Initiative underway. You're also going to have these multi-cloud capabilities, right? So, and not all clouds are the same. I think we've all learned that. And so, really important to be able to stitch it all together. Great tee up for New Relic there in regards to, you got to instrument that, right? You got to know where these things are. Once your environment starts to get, you know, less complex in some ways and a lot more complex in other ways, right? So what does that feel like once you've fully enabled that type of capability?
So we've really got a lot of lessons learned from working with our federal customers and our commercial customers. When you think about putting together a really good citizen experience, one of the things that we did learn was that it's just not enough to do surveys and polls. You have to instrument everything. Ideally, you instrument it early. You know, since it's been mentioned, we're talking about single sign-on and login.gov. Login.gov project is an excellent example of a project that used New Relic from the very beginning to get a good positive result at the end. So there.
Yeah, I got login.gov.
Yeah.
I love it. It works great. Two-factor authentication, it's awesome.
So you know, our CEO, Lou Cerny, likes to say it's not production if it's not instrumented.
Yeah.
And another area where we've seen a lot of success with instrumentation is in the cloud migration area. This is an area where O'Neill just mentioned that they discovered 17,000 dependencies. 1,700 dependencies. Understanding what you're dealing with is job number one. And then there's a lot of other things that go into migrating, including doing a baseline before and a baseline after, so you can see what your investment is getting for you. And so these are the kind of things that, you know, New Relic is helping our customers manage with regard to citizens' experience in cloud migration.
And I'm sure the same in the private sector as well, right? As all these vendor partners here have a great big presence in the private sector as well in regards to, you know, marquee capabilities out there, bringing that into the federal service, which I think is awesome. Greg, let's talk about priorities. What is your laser focus number one, number two priority in 2020 as we enter this new decade?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, our Army is focused on four priorities, and we are laser focused on this: people, readiness, modernization, and reform. And from the IT view, that's really some really impactful directions that we have. In the area of people, you know, this whole culture skill shift is really something that's really important. We're working on our continued effort for what we call Workforce 2028. Is how do we shift the skills that are sort of legacy skills of managing servers to managing those that provide things as a service. As you know, we're doing enterprise IT as a service to figure out the best way how IT is delivered. That's a whole different set of oversight skills that we have to train our workforce for. As we talk about shared services, common shared services, migration services, that's a whole different genre of skills that we have to, and culture that we have to work on. In the area of readiness, really cybersecurity again, platform cybersecurity, weapon system cybersecurity, network cybersecurity, and individual cybersecurity, that's a big part of it. Modernization, our network is probably under the most dynamic change over the last 30 years, because again, as we highlighted earlier, from the disconnected soldier to the tactical network, all the way through the enterprise, getting the right data at the right time, kind of really any data, any C2 node, for multi-domain operations. And really in the cloud and the data thing is really the big engine, the big lift. Again, as we had talked about, cloud-enabled, data-driven. We've just published our Army data plan. There's an XORD that we're actually walking through. We just established an enterprise cloud management office, hired Paul Puckett that's going to help us, and really kind of centralize, focus, and execute. We want to build a little, learn a little, and prove a little, and then improve all through
Sounds
that.
awesome. We're going to fire it up a little bit because I want to make sure you guys the agencies get their top two priorities out there. Joe, what's the laser focus in 2020?
I'm going to continue focusing on improving our services, obviously reducing our operating cost, improving our cybersecurity posture, but one area that I'm going to put a lot more focus on in the next year or two is data management. Next to, you know, we're going
Says the chief data officer.
we're going to mature our data management capabilities. You know, next to people, next to our workforce, data is our most important asset. Yeah. And when you look at it, there's we've got to optimize our data management, our sharing, our use of data. Gary mentioned closing a lot of data centers. I've closed 97 data centers in the last 5 years. Wow. We moved a lot of that to commercial cloud environments, but we really didn't look at optimizing. We looked at how can we save as much money as fast as we can And so we got to go back now and look at that.
That's your cloud first, cloud smart play.
It
right?
is,
Yeah.
it is, and so we're hiring a number of data scientists now. We're looking at how we can further enhance the skills of our existing workforce with understanding data science. So we've gone through at the federal level 2 cohort training classes for retraining people in cybersecurity. We're looking at doing that now for data science. But we've got to continue focusing on data because it's the core of all these missions. We can talk about capabilities, but data is at
People and data.
Yep.
Gary, how about at USDA? Top 2 priorities.
Well, we're laser beam focused on preparing our workforce. You know, as we modernize,
Yes.
you can't leave your people behind. So we're preparing them for this new environment that they'll be operating in because of the technologies and solutions that we've implemented in USDA. Their skill sets need to change, and the relationship between our business partners and IT has changed as well. So we need to
Acquiring services a lot
yes,
different than
we need to
used
prepare them for that, and we continue to modernize. Outside of the COEs, we've consolidated our security operations center. We're modernizing that. We're going to consolidate our networks from 17 to 1, partnering with GSA using the EIS contract, and the back office activities. We're governing at the enterprise level. We'll be providing end user support services for the entire 100,000 people at the department level. And cybersecurity will always be a focus for us, continuing to modernize, how we improve our cybersecurity posture at USDA.
Laser focus on cybersecurity. Maria, at SBA, 2020.
Yeah, well, workforce, we're in our 2nd year of executing on our IT strategic workforce plan. Really continuing to push on that, educating our workforce for the IT workforce. 3/4 of it doesn't report directly into my office. So continuing to influence that, working on that, upgrading the skills for the entire workforce, everything from position descriptions to how we're hiring, bringing all that in. So a big focus on, and not just the IT workforce, but as we go through this digital transformation, we need to bring the rest of the workforce along so that they understand what the changes and how they impact them as we move into this, continuing to move in the digital world. The second thing is, we've had a lot of change in the last few years, maturing our processes and procedures. Focus on that this year so that we're repeatable, consistent in how we provide our services. So big push on that.
I hear it across the board there. Jose, top priority for HHS.
HHS has a $1.45 trillion hit on US GDP. It's 10% of US GDP. We have data on 1/3 of the people that live in this country. So we're focused on cybersecurity. How do we automate as many of the cyber functions as we can possibly automate so that we can lower the cost of delivering cybersecurity solutions based on the data set that we have? I want to leverage the existing cloud capabilities that we have and hook into those cloud tenants. I'm not going to re-platform all that data. That would cost too much money. That wouldn't be efficient. Secretary Azar is focused on lowering the overall cost of operations so we can put money back into healthcare, back into delivering services for people. So I need to understand how I'm delivering service and capability from a customer perspective. I need to create a data set so I understand how well we're doing that. And then I need to try and drive down costs. We've cut about $20 million out of our operating budget in the last 6 months, just from a CIO delivery perspective. So we're laser focused on doing that because we think that gives us the ability to put more money into healthcare, into the mission space.
Great place to laser focus for 2020. Well, this has been a fantastic show. I'd like to thank the guests for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us for the program. I'd like to thank the sponsors for which we do not have a show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Radio that make this program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience who tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal News Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.